Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Tact has been going into major detail on exactly what's been going on with the Cloud9 server drama over the last few days, saying you might get fines for calling out the CDL over playing on 35 more ping per player than OpTic Texas were in their match the other day, but also some interesting words on their matches to come. Tact seemingly implying Cloud9 expects to lose their upcoming games given this situation. If this mentality is actually what the rest of the team thinks, they may be already chalked before the season has even begun. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, it's just one of the things I like to mention sometimes. Thought this is kind of fascinating. This guy Vodric playing a tournament, and he was getting clowns yesterday, a couple of days ago, for his minimap placement. Now, I always find like little innovations like this kind of interesting. And as you guys can see, his minimap placement is right in the bottom middle of the screen, and then he's got kind of the amount of bullets in his mag just above that. And it's an interesting way. Like, you never really see anybody do this, but I do understand it, and it does make some degree of sense. There was a bit of a meta way back in the day that you guys know when you download the game, maybe it still does this nowadays, yeah, it probably still does. Certainly back in the day, you could set the borders, basically you expanded to show the size of your TV screen to the game, and then it would put the HUD items right in the corner of your screen, right? But there was a bit of a meta to say, okay, well, if I have my minimap closer to where I'm usually looking, it's quicker for me to look at. I don't have to, you know, flick my eyes all the way up to the top left and back again. So people tended to like close their HUD down a bit so everything was closer to where they were looking. This is taking that to the next level where I'm looking where I'm shooting and then I can just flick my eyes down, look at the minimap back up again, and I can see all the data right there. And you know, I suppose theoretically it wouldn't, there's never going to be an enemy in the spot where his minimap is, whereas there could be an enemy covered by the minimap in the top left corner potentially. So I actually think this might be an objectively better way to do it, but I don't think many people will, and the advantage if there is one is super marginal. It probably doesn't matter. But yeah, intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Wanted to talk about the map set real quick as well. There was a bit of discussion on next year's COD 2025, or maybe this game as well. So launch from Black Ops 1, this wasn't a competitive map. It was a fun map though, to be fair, and apparently it's going to come back. It may come back this year, it may come back next year in the new tryout game. Next year's game is meant to be kind of like Black Ops 2 remastered, really, like a sequel, but lots of similarities, that as we currently understand. So if they're bringing back launch, it means there will be other maps rather than just Black Ops 2 remasters, which is probably a good thing, but this isn't going to be used in competitive, you'd imagine. But then again, Red Card is being used in competitive right now. These are the numbers of the first weekends. So for Hardpoint, Skyline and Vault were the most played, then Protocol, then Rewind and Red Card in last place, which makes sense. However, crucially to note, in Search and Destroy, it's actually flipped, and Rewind and Red Card are the most played maps. Vault and Skyline aren't preferred so much for Search and Destroy, and understandably, I think both of those maps are not particularly good search maps, and Protocol is arguably even worse. That's only been played twice by the pros. Control is pretty funny. They've not played it at all on Protocol. It's just Vault so far, so probably they're going to put Hacienda in there, I'd imagine, even though Hassi might be broken as well. I don't know. The big question is, Hacienda's coming in. We know that. We don't really know what it's going to replace. On paper, you'd think, oh, Red Card's probably the worst map, but actually, is it? And do the pros feel that way? The answer is they don't. And they especially kind of like it for Search and Destroy compared to some of the others. You look at the numbers overall, Protocol would be the map to go if Hassi was to come in, which I don't think would be a bad idea. I don't really like Protocol, to be fair, so I wouldn't hate if that went. But there is a lot of debate on this right now, and Scrappy was actually talking about it yesterday on stream and basically saying that he reckons Skyline is the worst map. Now, Skyline looks pretty, and, you know, it does get a good reputation because of that. But I do agree, if this map wasn't nicely coloured in a mansion with a pool, looking kind of similar to a raid or to a, hijacked even, or some sort of, let's say, Hacienda almost, like it kind of gives those type of vibes at times. He reckons like if it didn't look like that, it would not get a good reputation because he doesn't think it's very competitive. He actually thinks Red Card is better. Red Card is bigger, it plays a little bit slower, still fast, but the spawns have more room to make sense on that map. So there's some debate on this right now, but I think the conclusion is that the pros are definitely not set in their opinion as to which map needs to go when Hacienda arrives.
I'm not gonna lie, probably gonna say something you guys might not like, but Skyline's probably the most uncompetitive S&D map I've ever played. It's fun to watch, but as a player, it's the most uncompetitive map ever. Bro, I'm not gonna lie, I would say probably Skyline's the worst map for everything. HP, like I said, HP is very fun to watch on this map, but competitive, Not so much. Like, red card's actually pretty decent. I would say red card's probably the first or second best HP map. Red card is as John, I promise you, as like as a competitive map, and like it's not. It's boring to watch for some people, but it's definitely not the worst map.
Now let's talk about the drama. Cloud9 versus OpTic was a big talking point this past weekend. Of course, Shotzzy was talking about the fact that their practice wasn't quite as strong as it might otherwise have been. Obviously, Shotzzy also made it pretty clear that if they played a tournament tomorrow, as in today or whenever, they're not going to win it. He reckons Thieves would be the heavy favourites, and OpTic are a little bit behind the curve as it presently stands. But they still absolutely slapped Cloud9 New York around. It was a 3-0. It wasn't even especially close. Now, I think Cloud9 had kind of lost that series mentally before they even went in. We know the ping drama that's been happening over the last few days. It's it's kind of complicated, but obviously a Texas team playing a team based in Los Angeles where Cloud9 are, ideally would play on something like a Denver server, but it seems like the teams have been having problems with that server skipping and everything, so instead they played on, I think, maybe a Chicago server, which was pretty chalked for the guys out in LA, and fair enough. Like, it's understandable to be frustrated about that. The big question, of course, is who's at fault for this? Is the CDL at fault for not fixing it? Yes. My question is, how has this only been talked about now? Because I think the teams still use these servers to practice on. So clearly the pros have known this Denver server or even the Salt Lake City server just doesn't work over the last few weeks. So how have the CDL and Activision or whatever not spent the last few weeks solving this problem? Maybe they have tried, but clearly they have failed right now. And if they have been trying over the last few weeks to find a good resolution here and it's not been working, then is there realistically any hope that the situation improves for Cloud9? Or are they going to have to say, all right, boys, we'll hire you an apartment out in Texas. You guys can go and play out of there. But that's not going to be the plan. Cloud9 are an LA-based organization. They will want to play out of LA. And even if the players want to go to Texas for server-related reasons, even if they were to do that this season, in the long term, Cloud9 aren't going to be happy unless the team is based out of LA, I would well imagine. And Attach is even implying here that, you know, maybe the CDL will come knocking because he was exposing them big time on social media, talking about the ping issues, saying how, he literally tweeted, either we can play the game or they're forcing us to forfeit. These are the type of things that probably the CDL would fine you for in the past. They don't seem to care as much nowadays, but I will share a couple of clips. I thought what was more interesting, though, is what he had to say on the upcoming matches this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully I don't get fined. No, I'm just kidding. I probably won't get fined. Maybe I will. Who knows? If I get fined and become the bad guy for wanting to not play on 35 plus ping in matches, so be it. Yeah, we're playing LAT. And then the rulings were different versus LAT and OpTic. I think versus LAT was on the Salt Lake one because we usually ping 40 to that one. I think 3 of them were on like 33 to 35. They're all in the same room, but one of them was picking higher, 10 or something, or 12 or 13. They're like, oh, the threshold is too great for that ping. We can't allow you guys to play on this server, even though 3 of them are on lower ping than us. Only one of them is on higher ping than us. We're still on higher ping than all the rest of them. Then they're like, okay, but we could try Denver or Chicago. On that, we ping, I think, 25, anywhere from 25 to 35 higher on each of those servers. It kind of just depends. It changes based on whatever. I don't know, the latency, speeds, the cords, the cables in the ground. It changes. They're like, yeah, not fair if one of their players is higher than you guys, but if all 4 of you guys are higher than the other team, then it's fair. So we're like, all right, so a player that's pinging 10 more than us isn't fair. And it's one player. The rest are pinging lower than us. But we're all pinging 25 to 30 ping higher than the other team. That's fair. And so that was that was the first time I was just like, wait, am I fucking crazy? Like, what? I might be brain dead, honestly. Yeah, that was the first part where I was like, maybe I'm going crazy. I don't know. Maybe I don't know math. And then, because in the game, if you turn the setting on in the game, you could see what your latency is. Everyone has their latency setting on to be able to tell them what the pings are. And then they're like, yeah, no, that makes sense what you're seeing. But yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. Actually, it's what we're seeing on our back end is the real data. What you guys are seeing is not real. So apparently whatever we see when you have your latency thing on isn't real. If you're in LA, you play an LA server and it says 2 ping, it's not real. If you live in Dallas, you play on a Dallas server and that's ping, it's not real. So it's just a really weird situation because they're saying it's not real. Like, all right, so we're just gonna bend over backwards, do whatever we gotta do for the league, and then just make these other team look like beast. I mean, we're about to play Rocker next. Rocker's probably about to look like IW OpTic COD Champs Grand Finals. Geo's gonna be shooting like IW Formal. It is what it is. bunch of beasts all in Texas. So whenever we play Texas teams, just know that they're godlike. It is what it is. Everyone in Texas is godlike. So we'll see you on Chicago, Dan. Enjoy the 20 ping when we're beyond 55. And enjoy the artificial ping.
So Cloud9, yes, the servers did affect, I'd imagine, their performance over the last few days. They played OpTic, they played Thieves, they pretty much got slapped around on both occasions. I mean, Thieves, they did win the Search and Destroy against, a fair play, but every other map was bad. I mean, the Rewind and the Red Card, they combined for, what, 222 points or something. It wasn't especially pretty. And the OpTic series was very similar as well, when they, you know, got 130 points on the Vault. So obviously, to some degree, the servers are affecting it. It's always a debate in COD every year because quite often we have these talks as like, okay, this team was struggling, lagging, whatever, but how much did it actually affect their in-game performance, right? Like, how big of a deal is 35 ping per player? It's a big deal, but is it everything? Well, not necessarily. I think there is definitely more to it in terms of Cloud9 just not looking like an especially strong team right now. But a lot of it, I think, is mental as well, because you've played OpTic, you've played Thieves. Sure, those are tough games, but your upcoming games are much more winnable. I mean, they play Rocker and Ravens next weekend. They need to win at least one, if not both of those series. Then Gentlemates, that's winnable. Then Miami, that's winnable. And then, okay, FaZe is going to be a taller challenge. But, you know, you look at these set of matches, and Cloud9 could very feasibly finish the stage impressively and still qualify for the winner's bracket for the major and all that type of stuff. We know that LA teams have struggled out of there over the last few years. That doesn't look likely to change this season either. But Attach's perspective was, if I was a Cloud9 fan, particularly concerning, because I know that in part he's joking, but I feel like these mentalities never particularly end well for the teams. When you're saying something like, oh yeah, well, I guess we're going to load up to the server and that team's going to be looking godlike on the map, and then it's going to be the same for Ravens. They're going to be looking like Infinite Warfare formal for them on the team and all this. It's like, I don't think it's ever a healthy mentality to take into a series, because it almost kind of implies that you've accepted mentally what your excuse is going to be. And that's the problem with this situation for C9. It's not entirely their fault, but Cloud9 can't solve this problem on their own as the players. All they can choose is how they respond to it. And this is the issue right now, because I think they're responding in a way to say, oh, well, if we lose, it's not because we're bad, it's because, you know, the servers are a problem. It may be the servers are a problem. It may be a bit of both. And it's difficult to have that mentality of, oh, we've got to keep improving and learning and getting better, when they don't know how good they are because they're struggling on all of these servers. And I think it's just a recipe for disaster. It's not entirely their fault, but I do think that this mentality just never ends well. And we saw this last year. The funny thing about this is that Attach was on the other side of it this year. You guys remember back in June, OpTic were having a very difficult stage. They lost to Vegas. And you guys remember there was talk about the way that Vegas was set up in terms of where they were based out of. Their ping, like Geo or Johnny, were on like mega ping servers. They were absolutely cooking, basically. And OpTic were implying that, oh yeah, these guys ain't all that. They're not actually that good, because, you know, the ping advantage of the online stuff. And to be fair, they might have had something of a point. Vegas went to LAN and weren't quite as strong. But OpTic weren't playing good COD. I think that's the conclusion here that Pred said, and it's funny how they use the same word. Attach was like, oh, those guys are going to be a bunch of beasts this weekend, which is the COD terminology for those guys aren't actually all that. They just look good because the servers are cheese or whatever, ping cheese. And Pred said the same thing back in June. GG's Vegas, those guys are beasts. And this was Attach's team at the time, right? This is on Attach's team. And Attach was the guy at the time saying, oh yeah, nice one, mate. We're better than, you know, you think we are, / you're not as good as you think you are. And now, you know, how the turntables or whatever they say, because Attach is now seemingly on the other side of it. And this was from Scrappy last year in December, when they got 3-0'd by Boston. I think that was the series, wasn't it? They got 3-0'd by Boston, memorably. And Scrappy was like, those guys are a bunch of beasts. Now, again, I think this is a quote. Scrappy was taking the mick, basically, and saying, yeah, these guys aren't all that. I think, again, it was like server-related stuff that they felt they were at a disadvantage. And, you know, maybe there's some truth to it. But when you have that mentality going in, it like just can never end well. It never ends well. And it was the same thing for OpTic last year when they got in the mindset at Major 4. They're like, oh, we just won Major 3. We're going to be fine. We're going to go to LAN. We're going to be fine. They turn up to LAN, got top 12. So, then they turned around and won Chaps. But the conclusion to me is that if this is the mentality that C9 are coming in with, this team is chalked before they've even begun. So, intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Just to mention this before we close out, because a couple of C9 players notable on here. Well, one anyway with Simp, but Envoy and Priestahh leading the line here. So this is players who have won major championships on 2 or more CDL franchises. Envoy and Priestahh, the only players to have done it on 3. They've, of course, won with Huntsman, with Thieves, with Ultra, and then with Priestahh, it was FaZe, Rocker, and Subliners, respectively. Impressive stats from these guys, especially from Priestahh. But, of course, he's not had the greatest time over the last season or so. His 2024 was rough on Boston, and this year has not started especially strongly either. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.